tonight for Zach Moss. Again, and by the way, we're going to talk about this because there's a bunch of teams on bye.
Yeah,
right?
Let's jump into the rest of the running back waivers for Waiver Wire, and we'll start right there with those notable running backs on the bye in Week 13, like you said, Matthew, with Baltimore, Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell, Buffalo, James Cook, Chicago, Khalil Herbert and Deontay Foreman, with Vegas, of course, Josh Jacobs, Minnesota, Alexander Madison, and if you're hoping for more for Ty Chandler, and with the Giants, Saquon Barkley. So a lot of big names on the list on the bye in Week 13.
Yeah, especially Jacobs, Barkley, and Cook. I think they were starting in most leagues. Gus Edwards, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But, prior to last week, Gus Edwards has been starting in most leagues as well. So you might need a running back. And one of the other things we're going to talk about is, honestly, we'll talk about some of the guys available, but there ain't much out there.
No.
There's not an obvious guy where you're go. So Zach Moss, and so one of the things we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about important insurance running backs. And Zach Moss, just again, whether he plays this week a full complement of snaps, half the thing, or Taylor's going to play through the injury and he's going to get the majority of work. The fact is, it just goes to underscore the importance of, as we head towards the playoffs, of your roster construction, protecting your star running backs and having those insurance running backs when guys go down. Because it's always weird. You never know. You never know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And two quick mentions.
We thought Taylor was fine yesterday.
Yep. There's more attrition at that position than any in U.S. sports.
Two quick mentions for us here, because they don't meet our threshold of availability. They're both 38% available. Keaton Mitchell on the Ravens. We talked about how he has the bye. If he's somehow out there in your league, very important name to keep an eye on. There's a good chance he's not. And Panthers running back Chuba Hubbard against the Bucs this weekend, 38% available because of all the change on this coaching staff now, Barry.
So not only has Frank Reich been fired by the Carolina Panthers, but also Deuce Staley, their running back coach.
And Josh McCown.
Yeah, and Josh McCown. So, again, we just talked about variance. And so whether it's, Chuba Hubbard, it's at some points during the season, it's been the Chuba Hubbard show. And at other points, it's been a committee between him and Miles Sanders. But the fact is that he's been by far the most effective running back of the two of them. Clearly, the team is not happy, understandably so, of how that offense is going, in Carolina. And so, for me, this is just, this is somebody that I think is because there's variance in the coaching game as well, in the regime, that you could see a scenario where Hubbard ends up becoming the starting running back here.
Yep.
Because they've got to get something going, and he's again. He had 92 total yards in Week 12. He got into the end zone. He's just looked much better than Miles Sanders this year.
Yep. And just quickly on Keaton Mitchell, this is a strange thing to say, but I think Baltimore's replacement for Mark Andrews in a way is going to be Keaton Mitchell, because they need to find more ways to juice their offense. They've not looked great on offense recently. They've been struggling against the Chargers defense. Is not very good. They didn't really move the ball that well. Mitchell just gives them a spark. He gives them an extra dimension. I really think it's going to be Mitchell, Zay Flowers, and Odell, and those are the three guys his offense will run through.
Well, you saw the manufactured touches for Zay Flowers. We didn't really get into that game that much yesterday. We had a lot to cover. But, yes, 46% of the snaps in Week 12. He overtook that backfield, and that was a game in which it was close. It's not like the Ravens were in pass-happy, we've got to come back mode, so you would think where Mitchell would be out there. It seems like, they're really starting to trust the young man, and to your point, he gives them an element of speed and big playability. I'm not ready to bail on Gus Edwards, They should have given him the goal line carry. He didn't get it down there. But yeah, Gus Edwards, again, becomes very he's a touchdown-dependent running back who isn't involved in the passing game. That's going to be Keaton Mitchell. So he's somebody we've talked about a lot on the show over the last month, but still out there in almost 40% of leagues. They're on a bye this week, but worth picking up if he is out there and you don't have an immediate need this week.
There's a good chance those guys aren't available, so we'll move to someone who most likely is, and that's Dolphins running back Jeff Wilson Jr. against the Commanders, 83% available. Wilson had a really good game against the Jets in Week 12, 11 carries, 56 yards, 3 catches, 17 yards. Just looked good, Matthew. I think that was the takeaway. We don't know the status of Devon Achane right now. That's another thing to keep in mind here going forward.
A lot of different moving parts here, yeah. And so there's a chance that Wilson goes back to being third string if Achane is active. We don't know what the status is. But in a game in which I think the Miami Dolphins honestly crush my Commanders, seriously, it's two different offenses. It's just two different teams, right?
Yes.
The Commanders are not good. And the Dolphins are a very good offense, and so could you see a scenario where Wilson's getting some work in the second half? Again, If Achane's out and you're telling me here's a guy that's going to get double-digit touches against the Commanders, I'm in, right? But if Achane plays, there's still a chance that Wilson, given his injury history, we've seen Achane come back and have to leave early. I agree with you. I thought Wilson looked like the more explosive back compared to Mostert. Mostert got into the end zone twice, so you were fine with it. But as somebody who has a lot of Mostert and doesn't have a lot of Jeff Wilson in leagues, I watched that game and was like, hope McDaniel isn't paying attention. Because, real talk. Wilson looked like the more explosive back, fresher at this point of the season, which, stands to reason.
I think the key as well is their upcoming schedule. So you mentioned the Commanders. They're 9.5-point favorites there. That's going to close double digits, that line. Then the week after, they're home to the Titans, who don't have the run defense of years past. And the Dolphins are going to be 12.5, 13-point favorites home to Tennessee in that game with how Will Levis has looked. And they get home to the Jets again, who they were able to run on. So it's a very favorable upcoming 3 weeks. He is dependent on Achane being out or Mostert. The thing with Mostert as well, Mostert always gets hurt. Like they're not going to run Mostert into the ground these last few weeks because this team is going to the playoffs.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel's been with Mostert side by side. He knows the deal of how to really walk the fine line.
And in a game in which we think the Dolphins are basically going to be double-digit favorites, like could you see Mostert getting some rest in the second half and Wilson getting some more run as they try to get him up to speed to get that depth in the running back room going. So anyway, Jeff Wilson Jr. out there in 83% of leagues, definitely worth a spot start this week if you're desperate.
Let's take a look at Barry's priority insurance running backs here. We got Rico Dowdle, Tyjae Spears, Elijah Mitchell, Kenneth Gainwell, Samaje Perine, Ty Chandler, Dearness Johnson, Royce Freeman, Joshua Kelly, and Roschon Johnson. Now, Jay, we know these are true insurance running backs in case of injury to the guy in front. But out of all of these, who do you think is the viable desperation play this week, if any?
It's not great, is it?
No,
it's not a very great list.
It
feels like this kind of segment is sponsored by Rico Dowdle these days. He's the definitional player. I think the guy who has the most upside is Roschon Johnson, and we'll see what happens with the Bears and their running back situation dealing with some injuries. But I just think the combination of his talent, their youth, his potential to be a 3-down guy, Roschon is the one who's most interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, the only issue is the Bears are on a bye this week, but we want to mention him, and we're going to talk about that game coming up and just how brutal. But it did seem like, they used Roschon a lot more than Khalil Herbert last night. They drop back to pass a ton, so maybe that's part of it. They trust Johnson more in the passing game, and we'll see what happens when Foreman comes back. But to your point, this is somebody that had nice draft capital, and we talked about the fact that
they like him a lot.
in any college where he didn't have to play behind Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson is a star in college. So that's somebody who I think is interesting, but again, probably not available this week. If I had to pick somebody for this week, Dowdle is somebody. Cowboys are averaging almost 30 running back touches a game, so Dowdle's been starting to get some work as well. And I'll just say, Ezekiel Elliott, who's always a threat to fall into the end zone. They don't have a lot of answers in New England, so maybe they go run heavy. Zeke has gotten double-digit touches each of the last 2 weeks. I know he didn't score against the Giants. It was Ramondre, and it's going to be a low-scoring game, but still, just in a week in which you're truly desperate, there aren't kind of obvious guys to go pick up. Zeke's going to get double-digit touches and have a chance to fall into the end zone, and that's kind of what you're hoping for. It's sort of desperation. The other guy I might mention might be Patrick Taylor. I know he didn't do anything at all on Thursday again, for the Packers, and we'll see what happens with Aaron Jones. But I don't think A.J. Dillon's very good.
And
he looks like he's banged up. He looks like he's moving slow, and so concrete. Taylor's the passing down back, and as that passing offense has been getting going under Jordan Love, I could maybe see some more run for Patrick Taylor this week.
The other thing too
if Jones is out.
The Packers, so they played the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football, which is suddenly. NBC just keeps on pulling out these great games out of nowhere. This game had no right to be compelling. Now Jordan Love is apparently very good. Vikings Broncos a week ago, that was supposed to be bad. Now it turned out to be good. So that's going to be a good one. And the Chiefs, they don't have a great rushing defense. That's how you attack them. And then after that, the Packers, who are fine, they're not a great team, but I think they're going to be favored in every single game the rest of the way. They have a very easy schedule, so it'll be favorable to their running backs.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.